And all the stories are about trauma. And trauma impacts us in very similar ways, no matter if you've been raped or if you lost your mother in a traumatic way as a child. Like the feelings that come up are very relatable. And that is the main point of each story, is to talk about like what is the feeling that came up for you.
Welcome to Shifty Choices and Laughter Lifts. And today I would love to start reading this beautiful poem that I came across literally this afternoon before I started the interview. And it starts with I am learning me every day. I am not singular in this experience, but multifaceted in all that move through. Let's make shit weird. It's better that way. It was 9 years ago today. I broke down in a mirror and I have admitted to myself I was trans. Now, when I look in a mirror, I'm not any less confused, just confident that my confusion is part of who I am. I seek stable chaos. I embody all and none. I exist in and out of boxes. I am juicy. I am Josie. Hashtag exist, I am Josie. Change is the only constant. Denver, Colorado, Denver artist, and straight from Denver, Colorado to speak and spend the next few hours with us. My beautiful guest is Josie Ivy Nixon. And I'm gonna let you introduce yourself because I could say many things about you, but all I can say to summarize is you are an amazing, inspiring human being. I absolutely love you so. I love what you're doing. We're gonna speak a little bit more about, but now this stage is yours.
Oh,
Okay.
thank you for having me. What a nice intro. I am Josie Nixon. I'm a event producer here in Denver, Colorado. I like to consider myself maybe more than just an event producer. I'm a little bit more engaged in the artistic side of my events, which is really fun. Um, yeah, I've lived in Denver for almost 7 years now,
Mm.
Colorado for almost 10. Um, and I'm from Michigan, the cornfields, the country sides, the grew up in the woods, and now I live in a fancy downtown apartment and wear pink sunglasses every day. I'm consider myself a bit of an enigma. I am neither here nor there and everywhere at the same time. That is just what I strive for on a daily basis. So when I say things like I look in the mirror and I'm confused, I think what I mean is that I don't think we all know ourselves as well as we like to think, and that if we don't accept that we change every day, we just end up way more confused and way more challenged by the shifts that we have to accept every day in order to just be our most authentic selves. So that is what I'm on a mission to do in this phase of my life, is just be authentic every day, unabashedly, and whatever that means for me in that moment, accepting that challenge.
Mm. So looking back, you mentioned about 9 years ago. What has changed for you if you just look back and see where you are now on your journey?
Oh God, what hasn't changed in 9 years, you know? Um, 9 years ago, I sold pretty much everything I owned, put everything else in my car, and
Mm.
then packed up from Michigan and traveled around a little bit, camped a lot, separated myself from the world, and then came to Colorado. And if you were to see a picture of me from the day I left to today, I look about as different as I say everything has changed between now and then. Um, the lifestyle I live, the people I surround myself by, the just the world that I exist in, the world that I've created for myself, the one that I am proud of, all of that I think is just so different than what I was doing in Michigan 9 years ago. And then on top of that too, just the growth of someone in 9 years. I was 24 years old when I left Michigan. And I think it would be silly to say that I've changed more than anyone else in 9 years. But I think maybe because I have the outward change, people view that as particularly unique. Um, I think it gives me different perspectives, being trans, but that doesn't necessarily make me think my 9 years have made me change any more than anyone else in 9 years.
Well, looking some old pictures of you, I must say you sure look gorgeous, hot, sexy, juicy, as you like to
No,
call
I was hot. Don't I know that. I've always been good looking.
Uh, so could you share with us your personal journey of coming to that realization and acceptance of your gender identity?
To sum it up for a relatively short explanation, I think I always knew that I was not a boy. I don't think I knew what that meant
Hmm.
in context of just existing as a boy in Michigan. So it put me into deep into the closet, and because of the fact I knew this part of me existed, I couldn't let anyone else get close to me, because if they were to get more than surface level,
Right.
then they would figure out something else was going on. So I was really sort of giving everyone a shell of who I was. And I think in younger years, that's like not too challenging to do. People don't really need to get to know you super well. I think I struggled sometimes with close friends.
Yeah.
But then as I became an adult and I like went to college and moved out of my hometown, got to reinvent myself. I reinvented myself into a piece of shit, effectively. I um I lived so far in the closet, which forced me to present to the world a version of myself that I felt like masked any femininity, any um, part of me that could be exposed and revealed as not this hyper masculine guy. So I was like the gym and parties and drugs and alcohol and just being a classic self-absorbed, not very aware, not in tune, not paying attention to the world around me, just pretty much waking up on a daily basis and deciding like, am I gonna make it another week?
Mm.
And if the answer was like, sure, why not? Then might as well just get fucked up and have a good time, because I don't need to plan for my future. At no point in my life before the age of 27 did I really know that I needed to be planning for 5, 10, 15 years, 20 years in the future. I always thought I wasn't going to see 30. I didn't think I was going to see 25. And
Why?
then I hit 25 and I was like, oh, okay, maybe I'll make it to
Yeah.
another year or another year.
Why did you
Um,
have all of those thoughts, if you don't mind me asking?
oh, I mean, I don't think I could comprehend what suicide was when I was really young, but some of my first memories are me hiding girl clothes in my closet, or like wearing um like going into my sister's room and like taking her dress or something, and then like being so ashamed that I would physically harm myself in the bathroom. And that was me like 7, 8, 9 years old. And for that to be happening to someone that young, I think is a lot of internalized pain and internalized struggle. And so as I got older, I started being able to identify that as just basically suicidality. So when I was a kid and people would ask me, what do you want to be when you grow up? I was always kind of in my head, I was like, I want to be a stay-at-home mom. I wanted to have two beautiful kids with a golden retriever and a white picket fence. I wanted the American dream. I wanted my sexy husband to come home in a suit and like take care of me. But I knew that that couldn't happen. So I was sort of like, no, I don't know, because I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to grow up because I don't want to be a boy. I don't want to be a man. And that suicidality just got worse and worse and worse and worse until I was able 9 years ago, just a few weeks ago, that anniversary of the day I looked myself in the mirror and accepted, okay, you're trans. Now I actually knew I could take steps to not be someone who just was throwing their life away on a daily basis.
And you could accept that you have identified what could be the way for you to literally perhaps have the conversation with your family too. How was
Oh God, that took another that probably took another 8 months for me to figure out how to say something to my parents. And I'd already moved to Colorado. I was pretty much ready to lose contact with everybody when I started telling people I was trans. Um, but that, to me is part of the experience of changing who you are, is like I'm a very different person today as I was 2 years ago. I'm in different relationships. I live in a different neighborhood. I have different close friends. Because I've kind of become this like theatrical, authentic, big version of myself. Not everybody wants to be around me. So like I lose people no differently than anyone else does. And when you come out as trans, that's an experience that a lot of trans people will have, or a thought that they have, or a fear that is. And it was tough, but my parents and I are super tight now, and they're huge supporters of the show. They're huge supporters of me. They're huge advocates for me in my life. They are amazing people, and I'm so blessed to have them as my parents.
that's wonderful sharing and extremely inspiring. So for our listeners that who may not be so familiar, how could you explain from your point of view what transgender means to you?
Literally, it means, I think, transitioning gender. So back in the day, that meant from man to woman, woman to man. Now, as we've adapted to new language, I think transgender is an umbrella term that just means you don't look, feel, act, identify internally with the gender that was given to you on your birth certificate. That being said, I don't know if everybody who's trans calls themselves trans, and I don't know if everyone who doesn't use the word trans could fit into a trans umbrella. But I think it just means you view gender differently. I also can't keep up with what the kids are using for these terms now, sexuality and gender. And I usually just tell people I'm queer. And when they look at me, they're like, okay, we don't get it. That's fine. But, and yeah, so a quick explanation is they don't identify in any way, whether it be internally or externally or both, with the gender that they were assigned at birth.
And let's say 9 years down the line, what sort of advice could you give to people that are perhaps living this reality now? Hmm.
Same as my intro. I mean, I think the longer I've been doing this queer thing, the more I just believe it's not unique to queer people or trans people to wake up every day and be like, what do I like today? Sometimes I wake up and I'm like, I want to wear, um, a suit and a button-up shirt and a bunch of necklaces and go full makeup. And other days I'm like, no, I'm gonna wear a baseball cap and a fucking wife beater. It's just an expression. It's every day it changes, and just accepting that we change every day, and at no point will you feel like, oh, I'm done.
Mm.
Yeah. And nobody in their 20s has got it figured out. Nobody in their 30s has got it figured out. And I don't believe anyone in their 40s and 50s and 60s. My dad has changed more in the last 2 years than I've seen him change in my whole life. And he's gonna be 67 years old this summer. So I am I think my advice for every single person, and especially for queer people, is that you just have to accept that you're changing and not to expect tomorrow to look the same as today.
Yeah. And perhaps not to compare yourself to other people too, and allow yourself to live that present moment, to live your own experience, to perhaps stop reading books and getting so many different advices about just be you.
Yep. And truly just meeting people that don't look, talk, act only like what you like. I think we talk a lot about social media being an echo chamber. And I think, for to some extent, that's probably fine because the internet's a terrible cesspool of horrid people. And if you want to go on the internet and look at funny memes, you should do that with your friends. But in real life, like in actual community, in my neighborhood, I don't only talk to people who look like me, mostly because nobody looks like me. And then second to that, like my my best friend and I do not agree on
Mm,
so many things. And we talk to each other and understand that we don't have to agree with someone on every single thing to love them. And that is hands down, no questions asked, why I do what I do. We have to understand that to grow and be comfortable with who you are, you have to be able to stand up to challenges to who you are. If you only believe something as thinly as if I confront you about it, you can't defend that opinion. You don't believe in that thing. You just read it on a meme, and now all of a sudden you think it's true.
mhm,
And I think that's the same about our identities. If you are wearing a dress one day and you get really self conscious about it, don't wear a dress the next day. That's okay. Wear a pair of pants and a cute shirt. Like, give yourself a break. Like, represent that, like, not every single thing you do is like a core piece of your identity.
mhm,
We can disagree with ourselves and our communities, and we have to absorb things that don't make us feel comfortable. And if you're not doing that in real life, then you're going to be sad camper when you finally do get confronted by somebody and you can't defend how you believe something or how you act or how you identify.
mhm. I like to think that if you feel that you're trying to fit in any place, in any community, then it means that one is not the right one for you. You need to find the one that actually are
Yeah.
there with their arms open and just say, "Hey, dude, I just love when we hang around and let's just party or let's just, go to a library, go to a cruise, do anything that it resonates with, between you two or between you and the community." And that's what it should be life about, and never about we trying to change or be someone just for we be accepted by.
So that's interesting
Mm.
because I believe that for like close core friends. I'm not going to consider someone my good friend if they don't believe in gay marriage.
Mhm.
But I do know people, most likely, who don't believe gay people should be able to get married. Now, I vehemently disagree with that entirely without a question. I do not think that's a good opinion. But to then say to that person, I don't want to be around you ever, that is no different than someone saying, well, I don't believe in you being trans. You're not allowed to come here. That is no different, in my opinion.
Mhm.
Like, I know that we don't live in the same country, and I have a very like maybe American mentality around this, but we are a country based on the beliefs of a melting pot of ideas. Just because I believe I'm morally right doesn't give me the high ground because they also think they're morally right.
Mhm.
So if I only ever surround myself with people who agree with everything I believe and accept me with open arms, then how are we going to make progress? Every time I meet someone who's never hung out with a trans person before, which is still
Yeah.
a lot of people, I don't shove pronouns down their throat. I don't tell them queer stuff. I just talk to them. I just talk to them about like what their day is like. I figure out things we have in common. I talk about growing up in the woods. I talk about the fact that like I love cars and I think shooting guns is fun, although maybe we shouldn't have to have a 50 cal rifle in our house. I talk about things that we can relate about. And that then gives them an experience with a trans person that's positive. And that is more activism. That is more community building than I think a lot of people do in their entire lifetime, because it's not shoving beliefs down somebody's throat. It's just building community.
Mm,
So I think for me, representing that I change every day, representing that I am just a collection of all of the people that have inspired me.
yeah.
Some of the people that have inspired part of who I am, I don't like. Just genuinely not good people. And but they inspire me. Like an example everybody knows is fucking Donald Trump. This guy and I would not get along, no question. I don't think we would ever be friends. But at the same time, I understand and like am inspired by how he became this fucking mecca within a political party. That's inspiring. He did it through some methods that I believe are bad, and I'm not going to do that.
Mm,
But if we only ever accept people who love us unconditionally as our community, that is sticking our heads in the sand and saying everything's going to be okay.
mm.
And it's obviously not.
But how about if you see
Things are
that
not going
as an
great.
opportunity to don't get so into a toxic environment and keep your
Sure.
sanity, your energy level? Yeah, that's how I see it.
Yeah, keep your center, have strong beliefs, be, confident in who you are, and then stick your neck out, put yourself in situations where you're safe, but also challenged to hear things you don't believe, to meet people who don't get you. I mean, yeah, we're not talking about it yet, but that is what inspired the show that I'm doing. It's just that I think we live in insular communities where it's me versus you and us versus them, and they're on that side and I'm on this side, and I'm over here like yelling at the top of my lungs. We are just one community of people. That's it. If we stop viewing ourselves as all of these boxes put next to each other and just flow around and don't identify exclusively with people that just look like us or act like us or believe the things we believe, like that's how we grow as a community of people and as a society of people and as a population and human race. I mean, that's a little grand. I'm just focused on one city at a time.
Let's transform Colorado first, and then we go to
Yeah. I'll start with Denver.
Oh, and I think that's the beauty. I love to educate people, within the program. That in the end, there's no right and there's no wrong. We are trying to figure out how's the best way to live life.
Right.
And um, let's talk about Exposed now. Just share with everyone. You are the director and the producer of the show, which is Exposed Raw Memoirs on Display. I love the name, by the way. So yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, so this is the newest project of mine. We are about just over a year and a half old. We started right at the end of 2022, and it is a storytelling project based around the idea that we have to listen to the stories of people that we don't agree with, that we don't understand, that we don't listen to. People who have stories of trauma. I focus almost exclusively on the most traumatic things in our lives. And I'm talking about rape, incest, domestic violence, religious extremism, suicidality, murder, death. I mean, it is very, very intense. And I take that very seriously when I present this show to an audience of people. I create a safe environment for us to hear the stories of people that we don't know at all. They go up on stage, they tell a story. This happened to me. It felt like this. And it's done very professionally, very high end storytelling. And when that person gets off the stage, what we have done is now 160 people relate to that person and say, oh my gosh, that's horrible that you had to go through that. I went through something similar, or I know that feeling of loss, or I know that pain that you were feeling. If you express your emotions authentically, transparently, in a raw memoir, people don't have to know you in order to want to support you, to want to love you, to want to hold you and say, oh my, I can't believe you've been going through this. Like, let me help you. And when I host this show, I think we've done 15 shows now, if not a little bit more. And I'm not kidding you, 100% of the shows, the storytellers have told me that it is basically narrative therapy. They get to say things that have happened to them that they don't even get to tell their friends. And they have 100 people plus give them a round of applause. That is profound. And for the audience on the other side of it, we have reviews on Facebook, and I have people messaging me and telling me, I feel so connected to this person's story. And I got into this work because I told a story on stage in 2018. I think it was March of 2018. So we're just past 6 years of doing this work. And it was a story about me figuring out I was trans. It was a very trans story, very formative moment in my life.
Mhm.
And this guy walked up to me after the show, not trans, this just like older white gentleman, this
Mm.
big, beautiful, bodacious wife, like all for all intents and purposes, this man and I have nothing in common other than the fact that we're white.
Yep.
And he looks at me and he says, I've never felt more impacted by a story in my whole life. And he's crying. And he like asked if he could give me a big hug. And we did this big hug, and he told me a little bit more about why it meant so much to him. And from that day forward, I was like very aware, in order to create bridges with communities that don't look like me or think like me or experience the world like me, all I have to do is just be transparent and authentic. And it took maybe 5 years to start this show where I could really say that I lived that kind of life. But when we do that, that has formed my daily practice of like why I think it's so important we don't only surround ourselves with people that are insular to our beliefs. Um, so that is exposed in it's sort of like in a long mission statement.
Mm. And why do you believe that people fear to be exposed?
Judged. We
Which
are judged. When I talk about my assault,
mm,
when I was assaulted a few years ago, the first time I told that story to people, I was crying. I couldn't get it out. I was so upset to have been a victim. I was so embarrassed to have like let that happen to me. And that's just some internalized victim blaming, of course. But I do think that really, it's really hard to accept that we have so much of our community that is just scared to share something violent has happened to me, or something scary, or something fucked up and traumatic has happened to me, and it makes me scared to move through this world.
mm,
Like how many women do I know that have been assaulted? Statistically, it says 1 in 3, but we know that statistics are never fully accurate, and I would say it's probably higher than that. But on a daily basis, or a weekly basis, or a monthly basis, we're not talking about it. My friends don't tell me about that experience in their life because they aren't used to being able to confidently express like I was assaulted, and it changed how I move through this world. But when I can confidently tell you that that didn't change who I am as a person, other than maybe shaping my view of things, but I'm still fully me, like that took a lot of time and a lot of confidence. And I think we don't give people the opportunity to do that. We put them in a therapist's office, we close the door, we turn on a white noise machine, and we say like, don't tell anybody else, Only tell your therapist about the hard stuff you're going through. That seems like a really dumb way to build community, you know? Go into a room and only tell one person who you're not actually allowed to be friends with,
Mm.
you know? So I don't think therapy is bad in any way. I think therapy is really important, but I do think that I shouldn't be ashamed to talk about the fact that I was assaulted in a coffee shop and have someone sitting next to me judge me for it. Or what happens in my neighborhood where I was meeting with a storyteller the other day. We were talking about how he was going through severe alcoholism, like severe addiction. And he had an experience where he thought he killed someone with his car. He was having dissociative episodes where he was delusional and he couldn't decipher what was really happening and what was just in his mind. And he thought he killed a child with his car. And it was really graphic. And the person sitting next to us was like, and this is a quote, I'm not even kidding you, trigger warning, and like judged us,
Oh.
got upset with us that we're talking about something that has really affected this man's life,
Mhm.
something that is really hard for him to share. And she just jumps down his throat like it's not appropriate for us to be talking about that. And I'm like, A, we're in public, you can just move.
Mhm.
And B, this dude lives in your neighborhood. This dude is struggling. And the first thing you do is judge him because what? You're not comfortable with hearing something hard? I think that's inappropriate. I think that's self-care bullshit. That's being traumatized by self-care culture. I kind of hate self-care culture. I think self-care is beautiful, but we can't make an entire culture around it because then we neglect our community entirely.
Oh, I love everything that you have shared, and I'm here listening because, I am a holistic therapist. And what is interesting is I had to deal with my own traumas to be where I am today, to be able to help people with their trauma. And because of my whole spiritual development, people come to me, and I never say that or it feels that it's a therapy session because I can literally just connect with the person and I can have access to things that has happened to them. Sometimes I feel, I see, and when the person is in that state of disassociation or they are in the denial, it's like, okay, that's absolutely fine. So within the session, I can take them on a journey that they actually meet their perpetrator and they can see from themselves what actually has happened and have, the possibility to learn the lesson, why they had to go through, this life struggles, through the trauma. But it's an experience that I never ever would have been able to be where I am if I never have faced my own traumas. Um, and there was a lot. I had to actually write my own trauma tree. And, things like have seen my husband having his last breath when he had suddenly a heart attack. That was one of my worst traumas ever. It took a long time to process. But looking to how you help people processing the trauma through the storytelling in itself, where do you think that healing processes start? Is actually during the workshop when they actually need to decide what is the story that they need to revisit that potentially has caused them, the most painful feeling? How is that process when you work together with them?
Great question. I think it's different for a lot of people.
Hmm.
My process usually starts with a phone call, and that's very light. It's here's the mission. This is what the show is. This is what the timeline looks like. What do you think you want to talk about? And they usually just mention an incident, a car accident, or a moment with dad when I was a kid, or my mom and her CPD, whatever that is. So um, that I think is sort of this like trigger moment in people's minds to actually start thinking about, okay, I have to tell a traumatic thing on stage. I have to like write about it.
Yeah.
And I talk about the process being therapeutic, but I also tell them all I am not a therapist. That is not what I'm here to do. I am focused on creating a beautiful story with you. But if you open your mind to the process, you will have therapeutic benefits.
Mm.
But that first coffee meeting that we do, I always like to do it over coffee because it's casual, or tea or whatever. But I think that first time, there are occasions when I'm the first person they've ever told that story to. And when that happens, it really is just me remaining centered and calm and just like nodding and saying like thank you for sharing that, and like, oh wow, that's a lot, and I having to go through something like that is very intense. Giving them reassurance that this is a very, very big deal. And sometimes people are fully in tears, and other times I think maybe a little dissociated. But what we can do from there, and why I think this narrative process is different than just straight therapy, is I then reflect with them. Here's how we can write a story for a show on stage that you will be reading to an audience of people. And now, just like that, it's not just strictly therapeutic. It's okay, now I have a purpose. I am building this, I am expressing this part of myself. I am building a beautiful piece of art to share. And like that, I think functionality of the therapy, of the narrative process, of the meeting between me and them, I think that creates a way for them to sort of say, okay, I don't need to be constantly torturing myself with like, why did I let this happen? What's my, like, how did this ruin my life and all these things? But instead it's, what were you wearing that day? What
Mm.
was the weather? You know, like give me a funny anecdote of like, if you were a teenager, were you a teenager that really liked video games, or were you awkward? Did you have braces? So getting them out of the mindset of trauma only and getting them into story development, which is character, scene, narrative, plot, twists, ups and downs, the roller coaster of emotion that we put people through. I think that is so powerful for them. And then as the weeks go on, so it's usually 1 to 3 months of work for people. Um, as that process goes on, they're able to build something that they're really proud of. And I'm there to tell them, like, this is a really good story. Like, wow, I can't wait to put this in the book, And they're like, oh, I get to be in a book. That's so cool. Some of them are in books already, and that's not so great for them. But I do think the first time they read the beautiful piece of art they've created, so at rehearsal, that's the most emotion we get. And it's sad that that isn't how the show is,
Mhm.
because the show is usually like the 25th, 30th time they've read that story. So some of the emotional pieces of that have subsided, like have leveled out. They're able to maintain their composure. And I love that. I think composure is beautiful, but I also love heavy emotion. So
Mm.
that rehearsal, I mean, I kind of wish we filmed that. I
I
mean, it's
I just was about to
hours.
ask you, do you have that as a documentary perhaps?
No, but I think the reason why it's so emotional is because there's no stakes. They can cry and cry and cry and mess it up and have to take a pause, and they get hugs during the story, and they feel safe in this small group of people, and they know it's not being recorded. So that's why so much emotion comes out. And I will say, like, that's a beautiful part of being in my show, is that you get to experience that process. Not everyone does. The audience does not. I get to experience it on a monthly basis, and it makes me feel so privileged and honored to be able to hold space for these people. But the process looks different for a lot of people, but it is intense. I mean, there's a lot of crying. I cry a lot. Like my life is not. I am not jaded to these stories. I cry so much. Can't even tell you.
I really can imagine, which is also inspiring anyway, because this is where we can feel you raw and vulnerable, authentic, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah. We
And
I just,
yeah,
for me, when I have watched some of these videos, it's like I just have felt closer to your heart, because it's like I could, I'm very sensitive, so it's like I could feel, some of those feelings. And I feel this is why your show is so important, is so amazing. And I have seen you talking about and saying, yeah, we're not doing something that is totally different from what other people have done.
Mm.
But you said exactly what is your differential, which it is. You remember your words?
Because we've put it's revolutionary
Yes.
because of the mission I put behind it, I think is what I said.
Absolutely. Yes, exactly. You got it. And I'm just curious how people's life that get involved into these projects change. What sort of transformation, if you can perhaps share one or two stories.
Sure. I actually had a woman who was the bartender on a first date I was on. And I ended up really liking the restaurant. So I was going back fairly often. My office was close by. And we got to know each other a little bit. So she came to a show, and I saw her a couple of weeks ago. She's only been to one show, and she talked about what I shared on stage, that I want people to use this experience to help them live exposed. And what I mean by that is just when someone says, "How are you?" you don't just say good.
Mm,
You actually give them an authentic answer. When you are talking to a friend and they're like, "What's going on in your life?" you don't just say nothing or the usual. And I fall into that trap too. But she expressed this thought of everybody walking down the street towards me is got a unique story. And when they ask me how I'm doing or they say hello, I'm more engaged. She basically shared that my show allowed her to have a second thought that everybody she's interacting with in the world has got their own trauma, their own expression of how they wear that in their daily life. Why are they quiet? Maybe they were berated as a child for being too loud. And so I think that that story exemplifies perfectly what it means to have a mission that is like social minded. You cannot walk down the street and judge someone based on what they look like. You do not know anything about them. And that is what it is to be exposed, is to accept that everybody's lives is as complicated, if not more complicated than your own. And that's one that's really profound for me. Another one I'd say, um, I don't know. I think that there's also negative experiences with the
mm,
show.
okay.
Um, there's a woman who's still very close with me. We are like in community. We went to coffee just a few days ago, but every time she comes to one of my shows, which she's come to probably 3 or 4, she leaves in the middle of the show because she has a lot of things that have come up for her when she hears these stories. And I always express at the beginning of my show, if you need to leave, you are welcome and you are responsible for your own mental health. Like if you can't stay, you can't stay, and that's okay.
Mhm.
Um, and I think that to me is a reminder that this mission is a very, very real. It is having a profound impact on people. And two, it's not for everybody. You know, I am not the show that you should come to when you are depressed, having a lot of anxiety, or feeling way overwhelmed with your own trauma right now. I am a show for people who are ready to hear things that make them confront their own biases and own traumas and own triggers and things like that. Um, I don't give people trigger warnings. I don't give people a handout. I don't say it's okay to be upset. I
Mm,
basically say you're upset because this is fucked up.
yeah.
So is everyone else. Like you're not special in your feelings right now. We are all feeling fucked up because this is a fucked up experience that we are going through
Oh,
as humans. And that's not for everybody. And I know that. I know that.
well, I guess it also can happen that the person is literally just there, and it's not every single speaker that it will relate to her own life
Right.
story until something trigger whatever is there on her unconscious mind. And
Hmm.
it's like, I don't know why I'm crying, but I'm just feeling really awful now. And
Yeah.
then they feel, right, something really happened here. I don't know what it is, or perhaps I have some idea and I need some help, or the person will carry on being on the denial. So,
Yeah, the denial thing I is a big issue we deal with. I had someone tell me that they just didn't connect with the show. They were like, I didn't think the stories had anything to do with me.
mm,
And I remember having this thought inside my head that was just screaming at me like, I think that you need to wake the fuck up, dude. And this was a man, a young man. And I think to say that my show doesn't have an impact on you, like if you feel apathetic at the end of my show, which this person kind of expressed some
mhm,
apathy,
mhm,
I firmly believe you are not paying attention. Because how can you hear someone being assaulted by a police officer because of a mental health crisis and not feel emotion? I think it's just keeping your mind closed off and saying like, no, I don't believe them. And that is case in point denial. Like that is a perfect example of why it's so hard to move our social missions forward because people just don't want to believe them.
yeah.
And I'm not going to be able to convince everybody that these stories are real. I mean, I literally have the storytellers sign a document saying this is a true story because I want to be protected. That's what my lawyer told me. But I do think the same reason why I quit doing LGBTQ activism is that I don't believe the way to do it is by telling somebody that they're wrong or anything like that. So with this new show, I didn't tell him anything. I just was like, okay, I hear your experience and I probably won't see you at another one of our shows. That's fine. I just don't care. You
Mm,
know, I have 160 seats in my theater. I'd rather them be filled by people who care. And every single show, there are people that come that I am blown away that they're there. You know, conservative minded, religious people, people who, you know, do not exist in a world of like, oh, I'm an open minded person. Like, I
mm,
have a lot of conservative people that think the show is eye opening.
yeah.
I think that's really important.
Mm. And do you have any specific structure that you follow to make sure that the guests are going to have on every single night will have relatable and different stories?
No,
No? Okay.
no. The quick answer for that one is no. I have one theme, one one main thing that we look for in a story, and that's just trauma. And I can't tell you what is trauma and what is not trauma, you know? I don't. I don't act as gatekeeper. For the
Mm,
most part, I really don't say no to people. I've said no to very, very few people. And those are experiences that maybe wouldn't be at the caliber of intensity as some of the stuff I want to put on my stage. But what's interesting is I've never put a specific story in my show because it talked about a certain type of trauma. But at every show, there are through lines that come up. And I also do this thing where I have the audience write confessions. So they write down a confession. It might be sexy, funny, traumatic, horrifying. I mean, some people admit to some really crazy stuff. Um, and that's what I mean, I just have such a fat stack, and this is only like, you know, a fraction of how many I've got now. So people love doing it. And with those and the stories, what happens is you start to see like, wow, we really have a lot in common here. We really have a lot of stuff that we all deal with. And that might be on a certain night, you know, maybe it's issues with our mothers. And
mm,
it's almost like this collective conscious thing that happens. You know, it's like you walk into a room of people and everybody's thinking about trauma with their mom. And it just happens naturally. And maybe that's just the magic of theater. I don't know. Or maybe it's just my ability as a host to create threads throughout all the stories. Um, and all the stories are about trauma. And trauma impacts us in very similar ways, no matter if you've been raped or if you lost your mother in a traumatic way as a child. Like the feelings that come up are very relatable. And that is the main point of each story, is to talk about like what is the feeling that came up for you. More a lot of words, like a lot of feeling words, a lot of emotion is brought into each piece. So it's not hard to find through lines. And I don't have to go in and say, we're only talking to single mothers with abusive ex-husbands. Like I don't need to be specific like that to create a thread of people.
Mm.
Also, I don't want a theme, because again, it's about everybody in the community being connected, not just one type of trauma
Mm.
being connected to the people with that trauma. Like my assault and the people who got beat as children, very similar feelings, but I wouldn't know that if I only ever went to a show for people assaulted.
Yeah, I love that because, for example, I'm a bit like you. I don't care really for the scientific point of view what trauma is because I have been there. I live it, a series of trauma too. So when you say, I cannot just tell them, what the trauma is because they live it experience and it's exactly like that.
Yeah,
People come and see me, sometimes they're not going to use the word trauma itself. They will say, I have been through a period of stress, I have been through a period of challenge, or I have been burned out, overwhelmed. But when you really dig into what actually was there, it was a trauma related base. Yeah. But again, the person can disassociate, can be in the denial,
sure. A
only
lot of denial.
is experiencing can say, actually, I felt that it was like a trauma, or perhaps I didn't even realize that that was a trauma. So thank you so much for just conduct the show as you're doing, because it's like you just help everybody to feel special, as important as everybody else that's going through the same pain.
Yeah. And that is hands down why I want the show to be community based.
Mm.
So the Denver show focuses on Denver stories, or I guess Denver and like the surrounding areas. But I don't want to have a show where, if I take the show on the road to, say California, um, I don't want to bring Denver people there. I want California people to tell California stories, and I
Mm.
want it to impact their stories, because these are your neighbors. These are stories that happen in your coffee shops. This is like your friends and family. And I think for me, the really, really, really important thing that people take away from why I do this show is that these things are happening. Like, if we don't talk about them, they won't stop happening. I don't know, that's not a profound statement. We all know that to be true. Sticking your head in the sand is the dumbest way to prevent the next school shooting. But you know what is a great way to talk about the next school shooting getting prevented? Is to have people share their experiences of why they maybe contemplated doing a school shooting, which is a story we've had in our show. And it was insane and very intense and upset a lot of people. I got so much feedback about that story. But you know what it did? It created a lot of narrative about what it would take for a kid to approach a line and say, do I or don't I do this thing? And I never knew that. I never had a moment of thought about that in my entire life until I heard this story. But in the United States, I mean, we're so goddamn accustomed to school shootings here, it like hardly makes the news. And
Wow.
nobody wants to tell a fucking story about it. Nobody wants to listen. We all just want to complain. And
Mm.
that's like exactly why I put that story on my stage. Is because if we don't talk about it, nothing changes.
I know it's an awful comparison, but it's a bit like grief. We know exist, we know happen every single day, every single minute, everywhere in the world, but we don't talk about. We don't help
Yeah.
people to understand how they can overcome that. It's okay to talk about their feelings.
Yeah.
Mm.
Like, God forbid, I lose someone close to me in my life and I have that grief of loss. I am, like, I run a show about talking about this stuff, and I would be remiss to say I would have a hard time telling people that I lost someone close to me because they shut down. People get so weird when you talk about grief.
Yeah.
They don't want to hear it. They don't want to be tainted with your bad energy. God, I hate when people tell me that. Like, "Oh, I just don't want that energy." I'm like, "Oh, okay, so you only want good energy, so you just ignore all the bad things in this world?"
Yeah.
We
The
don't
thing
have that
is,
privilege anymore.
you never know when it's going to happen to you. I remember like extremely well, like it's today, someone I have met through my work. We haven't that been close friends, and she came into me as a friend, and then her partner passed away. So I have to support her with her grief. And then she was coming to me for reading because I'm also a spiritual medium. And then after that, what happens? I lost my husband. So she has helped me, and then a few months down the line, one of my best friends have lost her mum. So she also, turned back to me, and then after that, my belly dance teacher, she also lost her husband. So it's like we all connected. I have introduced to everybody now, and we created a, loving supporting group. But the reality is, if you would tell me this shit is gonna knock into your door, it's gonna be lived there for you to deal with, I probably would not believe until actually happened to me. So I acknowledge that probably is exactly like that. People only knows when exactly is something that's related to their skin. They need to feel and process themselves.
Yeah. Full stop. I don't think I would be able to show up for people the way that I am if
Mm,
I didn't do this show. And I have put myself in a very unique position of hearing all of these stories. And now I've just, I move through the world and people tell me all of the fucked up stuff that happens to them. And that's okay. I have accepted that that's what I'm doing to myself. Um, but at the same time, I can hear and hear and hear and hold all of this. And when I'm dealing with my trauma, when I'm dealing with something that's come up for me, I still struggle to share because it's just, you have to create an environment where people feel like they can share with you. It's not even, if I'm in a place of being triggered or upset or being re-traumatized by something that I've been through, I
mm,
might not have the mental fortitude to overcome a barrier to share with somebody. But what I do is I make it so incredibly obvious to the world that you can share with me these things so that there is no barrier. There is no wall they have to leap. They just know that they can just word vomit. And I'm like, I got you.
yeah. Yeah, no, I totally get it. And I think why I feel so passionate about your project is that myself, I felt that I have been silenced too. In few periods of my life where I could not say my own truth because that would upset someone and would sound arrogant. That's the majority of the comments that we have when we try to stand up for ourselves, and there was other situations that people so close to me suddenly it just got extremely toxic, and I had to remove myself from the situation, and create that boundary there for my own mental health until I actually arrive into the stage now in my life where I feel good, I feel confident, I have processed everything, and my boundaries are still there. I still don't want to have, those people in my life because the damage that has been caused, you can't really fix it. You need to allow they also process their own story, their own version, whatever they have created for themselves. Because when we're also going through these ups and downs in life, yeah, we have always the story, the way that we see the story, the way that we feel, the way to perceive, and the way that sometimes the true facts actually happened, and the way that everybody else has perceived the story, or the way that someone have told the story to third parties. So can you see there's too many stories involved, but only you that actually have lived there can say what actually has been right or wrong.
True.
You know,
Very.
only you can decide, okay, is it worth to be vulnerable and share that part of the story because it can be used and twisted, totally against you. I also live that as a reality. So there was a point, probably a few months ago, I actually felt like, you know what, I actually have healed out myself. I don't fear anything because what do I need to fear? Is it a death? I don't fear the death anymore. I have seen the death. The death has taken my husband. I have seen how that looks like. So I don't fear that anymore. I know there is a life progression and we'll carry on evolving. But then at the same time, it's like, now what I need to do is actually stand up for myself. And one of the things that I did is actually write about healing visibility because I never would be able to be here having this conversation with you and interviewing you about being exposed. Yeah. If I didn't have done that healing on myself and think, you know what? I have nothing to hide because in the end, I know my story, I know my truth, and whatever people want to say is part of whatever they have made as their own story. And I
Hmm.
have not given permission at all to be a participant,
Yeah,
with the way that they have written their own chapter. Does that make sense?
it does. Yeah, I like that. I think we're very aligned on that.
Hmm.
I do think by nature, creating a show means I've put myself in a situation where I have to be so much bigger than myself.
Yeah.
And how I do that is just by living my mission. And by nature, that inspires people. So, like, your ability to heal and
Mm.
then do this podcast or write your books, create community, the people around you, how you move through this world, and you just represent this healed version of yourself, unabashedly owning that you have traumas and pains and loss and grief and all these things. That is inherently inspiring. You can't move away from that. And people who interact with that, they're going to be inspired. They're going to feel, oh, that person just moves through this world with doing so well, like with so little fucks to give about what people think of them. And I think that's where I see my role entirely with the show is I don't go up on stage and read the stories of my trauma. I have done that. I've paid my dues.
Yeah.
And now I get to be the person up on stage that just casually mentions my relatability to each thing. And that casual nature of it, that ability to just say, like, wow, that me too, that I've had that. I understand that feeling, or I empathize slash sympathize, whatever one of those two it is. I think that that puts us in a place where people view that and they say, I want to get there. And I don't have a pathway for them to do that. You do because you're a therapist and you help people do that. But like by having a show where people can feel that inspiration, they can do it one tiny little step at a time in their own way with a therapist, without a therapist, whatever they want to do. They can keep coming back to the show. They can keep engaging with the community. They can do all these things. And I think that it's working. I mean, I wouldn't keep doing it if I didn't think it was working. And it's the exact same thing. It's I feel like I've done my work to be a healed person. And that to me is accepting that not every day I wake up and I want to do this work. Some days I wake up and I'm like, I'm staying in bed. Or I'm not going further than my couch today, and that's totally fine.
And I love that because we can give ourselves permission, but we also allow us to have the freedom, you know, to be able to do that. Because yes, there is days that we're thinking, oh my God, I want to have slept for 4 hours. That's not enough. And you're thinking, oh my goodness, no, I can't be present and do everything that I need to do. So perhaps I need to reschedule a little bit of my day for self-care. I know you mentioned the word self-care too, but that's where it's so important for people like us that needs to deal with so much different energy, stories, trauma, healing in so many different ways, we need to make sure that we are happy and comfort to be able to take another.
Yeah. I mean, like I said earlier, I don't think my show is for people that are struggling in this moment. And maybe if you're someone who struggles and needs to confront things in order to move through that, you would enjoy the show. But a full stop, my show is fucking intense, and it's by nature designed to be upsetting and designed to create an environment where you confront things that challenge you.
Mm.
Um, which makes me think when you go home, you should have a bath and practice some self-care. Um, but yeah, but I fully agree. Fully agree.
Okay, so tell me a little bit more about that. Is designed to upset people. What do you mean with that?
It's not that layered. I think I approach this from two very different mentalities. I feel like from an artistic side, I focus
Mhm.
on the beauty of the story, that the theatrical environment. I host the show so that it's engaging the whole time. It's not just storyteller, storyteller, storyteller. It's very fun, funny, exciting show. And it
Mm.
has a mission that is beautiful. It's to connect communities. And then there's this other part of me that's like a jaded, nihilistic, trans, queer person living in a world that is falling apart around me in so many different ways. And I just believe that, you know? And I think those two things collide in this idea of um like a last ditch effort. I believe in the social mission of this show
Mm.
100%. And part of that to me is we need to stop being so fucking sheltered. We need to stop being so fucking insular. We need to stop. I mean, I'm on the left side politically. I believe in the rights of humans. I believe so many things that are on the left side of the aisle. But at the same time, I look around at the people on this path with me and I'm like, you don't give a shit about the people on the other side of the aisle. You don't give a shit about them. You don't give a shit about their opinions. You don't give a shit about their religious thoughts. You don't give a shit about their ideologies, the way they live, the fact that being a farmer might be the hardest job in this entire fucking country, but yet we eat all their food. We have no respect for them. So
Mm.
I just think I was so tired of feeling like people were ignoring the stories of people not like them that I just created a show. And the side of me that is this nihilistic, jaded human recognizes we need to wake the fuck up. Like, we just need to wake the fuck up and stop sticking our heads in the fucking sand. I know I said that a lot, but I just believe both groups, whether it's queer, not queer, straight, not straight, left, right, farmer, urban, rural, conservative versus liberal, or city dweller, California versus Arkansas, British versus American. You know, it's like it doesn't matter to me because we're all fucked if we don't actually start to understand everybody deserves a place here, no matter what you believe. I mean, violence, not the answer, sure. But at the same time, your opinion is not better than someone else's opinion. That's just what it is. And if their opinion, if their life story has informed them because of the traumas they've been through, and you say, well, yours doesn't matter because you don't support gay marriage.
Mm.
Well, that's a dumb fucking outlook. If I didn't like anybody who didn't like trans people, I wouldn't be allowed to like 60% of the fucking people in my own country. Or maybe it's less than that now. I don't know.
Huge statistic.
I have no idea what the statistic is, but all I know is that a lot of people write me off right away because of the way I look, the way I live my life, and all of that. And if I get upset about that, then I certainly cannot turn around and do the same thing to other people. And so I don't think my show is for people on the far right, people on the far left. If you have a firm, extreme opinion, you are not going to like my show because that is not an open-minded opinion in my
Mm.
viewpoint.
Usually, what is the average of time that each speaker has?
8 to 12 minutes.
Oh, 8 to 12.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Are you saying wow that's short or wow that's long?
It is. Well,
I mean, this is
I
a
literally just have done 3 of 10 minutes this 2 weeks ago. But I'm just thinking because the stories that it's actually sharing, that when we think about the beginning, the middle, then the end, and try to make everything compact and you still include all of the emotions, the food for thoughts, it seems quite a lot to deliver in eight
yeah,
minutes.
it's not, I'm not asking a small task of people, but also the difference between, I think, the stories maybe that you're talking about sharing are that when you leave the stage, people know who you are. They know something about who you are as a person. Whereas the storytellers in my show, when they walk up on stage, the first word out of their mouth is story. Then you hear about something that has happened to this person. The
Okay.
last word out of their mouth is a story, and then they go sit back down in the audience. You don't know who that person is. You don't know their lifestyle. You don't know where they're from. You don't know their favorite color, their favorite food. You don't know their thoughts about the world. You know that they were traumatized.
Mm.
And by nature, I have now created an environment where you don't need to know anything about somebody to love them, to want to hold them, to want to support them. And so the next time you walk down the street and you see somebody who looks like me, maybe you're thinking, oh, maybe that person has a similar story to Josie's.
Mm.
Or maybe like I had I had an old cowboy. Like, like that's what he describes himself. He's an old cowboy. And I think living in a city, being queer, being surrounded by the people I am, we write off people who don't live in the city who are old. We write them off. We just are like, oh, you won't get me, you know? But Dwight is amazing. And the whole audience loved him. They loved him, but they don't need to know who Dwight is to know that they can love this guy. And like, that's why I keep them short, because I don't want the audience to know who you are. I want the audience to be able to say, I don't know anything about you, and I still get it. I still love you. I still have respect for you. So that I create a trend where no matter who you meet, no matter what you know about somebody, you can still have a space inside of you that says, I love you. So
Wow.
8 to 12 minutes is short. It's
It
short.
is. And how does people feel when you say we're not going to use your real name?
Oh, I pretty much always use people's real names. It's pretty infrequently that someone wants to hide a name. More often, we'll change the name of someone in the story.
Oh, right, I see.
Yeah.
Just to don't fully expose or protect somehow, but not for any reason. Yeah, it does make total sense. Yeah.
Yeah, maybe someone still lives locally. Although I will say it's mostly it's pretty uncommon. I mean, people, I mean, you hurt somebody enough, they're okay going on stage and saying this person did this to me. I
Mm.
mean, if you do that, that's the social implication of doing something fucked up, is that people are going to know that you did it. And again, when I don't know, an example recently in my life is a friend of mine was assaulted by someone a year ago, and we posted about it. She's pursuing legal action. We posted about it. 7 other women came forward and were like, me too. And all
Uh,
we had to do was talk about it.
I
But if
think
we,
I know who you're talking. With.
yeah, I think you do know.
Yeah, yeah.
And I think it's terrifying. It's terrifying to think that those other women didn't feel comfortable until someone else was leading the charge.
And again, if it's this person I'm thinking, this person is supposed to be helping people with their mental health. Is that
Oh
correct?
yeah. Yeah, a therapist who uses psilocybin. And I don't know how comfortable you are, but I'm happy to say his name. I just don't know if you want me to. Because that's
We're
what it
talking
is.
about being exposed, so it's your stage now. So
And I think, but that is exactly why the fact that I even question if I should say it for the safety of the people
yeah,
who
yeah,
are
yeah.
calling him out, you know,
absolutely.
I think it's terrifying. It's terrifying to think that, you know, someone would want to protect a person who's hurt them. And, you know, your listeners aren't going to be, you know, exclusively in this city. So it wouldn't matter here nor there. But I do think like when I had someone tell me a story just the other day for the first time, and she was sharing an incident that basically isn't even resolved yet.
Oh.
And I was like, why don't you consider,
Mhm, mhm.
like, if you share this about this guy, he's gonna hear about it, and are you safe? You know, you're telling an audience of people what he's done to you, which is very fucked up. Are you safe? Because he's not in jail. I mean, this guy is roaming the streets. He's a homeless dude and um, an addict and unpredictable and struggling through his life in his own way. And he really, really fucked up. And she wants to tell the story. And they're in an on again, off again relationship. She loves him, but she can't be with him. He's hurt her. She's, you know, stuck on him. And um, like, how do I keep her safe on my stage if we don't change one name?
Yeah.
Is the impact of the story for the audience more important than persecuting this man? I think so. We
Mm,
should persecute that man in a different way. But there's also a social implication. If you fuck up, your community should be there to tell you. And that's what I feel about Trinidad.
mm. You mentioned that you have been doing this show for a year and a half now. Does
Yeah.
the format has changed? Does anything has changed at all? Anything that probably look back and you think, you know what, we actually would benefit to redo this or that and yeah, innovate. I don't know. Share, please.
I mean, I'm just better at it, that's for sure.
Mm,
The stories are better now than they've ever been, that's for sure. I'm really honing in on the workshop process for the stories. Um, I think I'm more aggressive now. I'm
mm,
more I'm more pointed in my approach. I really come at an audience and say more clearly, why are you here if
mm.
you're not here to grow as a person? Like you can leave. I already got your money. I don't care if you leave. The show's not free. But when I first started it, I was so focused on um creating such a safe closed container. And that has not shifted, but my ability to create that container of safety and hold myself to a standard of this is why you're here. You're not here to have a closed mind. You're here to listen to things that you don't understand. You're not here to judge someone. If you feel yourself judging someone, reflect on maybe why that is. And I think that is probably the biggest shift. Just my ability as a host to take a story and move it through an audience of people in a way that creates profound, lasting impact. I mean, I have so many people come to many shows. Um, you know, there's a few audience members that have come to almost as many shows as me. Obviously, I'm at every one of them, but some of them have only missed, you know, maybe a handful of shows. But you know, I don't want someone to have to come back every month to be inspired. I want one show. I want you to walk out and be able to come back a year later and be like, I still feel this. Um, and that's what I'm working towards. That's where I think the biggest shift is just my ability. The performers have always been amazing. The audience has always just been such a fun part of the experience. The format is exactly the same as when it was in December. The only thing I've changed is my, I think, understanding of what I'm doing, of the impact I'm making.
Mm. You mentioned the performers. I wonder if every single one that actually sign up, they actually manage to go until the end and present, or there is some of them that, across these 3 months, they say, oh, you know what? I don't feel I am ready yet.
Um, Pretty infrequently they say that. Um, for one, a similar example to what I gave earlier. One woman was like, maybe in July I can tell my story because that's when the divorce will be finalized, and she doesn't want to jeopardize her divorce proceedings. So that's something that has come up a couple of times. Um, time commitment is another one. Like, I'm not asking for a small thing. Writing a story about trauma for you and I might take a week, but for some people it might take a month to just get a first draft. Um, so sometimes it's a big time commitment that holds people back. But I'd say like 75% of the people that apply end up telling a story on stage. If you're brave enough to get the application through to me, you're usually pretty aware. And more, the people that apply already know what the show is. It's not people just stumbling upon an application and submitting it. It's people who come to a show, feel inspired. Um, and that's the best way, because then they know what the show looks like. They know who I am. They know my role there. Um, and that, I think, is a really helps the process a lot. Um, but yeah, I'd say it's at least 75% of people.
Mm. You mentioned the fact that my show is not for everybody. You sit down and you have a coffee and you tell the person what the show is about. So I wonder, for people that are actually watching and listening to us now, if you had to, let's say we're having a coffee, I got my tea here. Just let's just pretend we're having this meeting. So just tell me, on that first meeting, how do you actually sell that the show is about, to convince, the person that they actually have a story to share?
Well, I will say first, before I go into that pitch, I am never trying to sell the show.
Ooh,
I am
love that.
actually trying to create almost like a barrier to entry. So, like, if you don't vibe with what I say, I want you to drop out right away. I don't want to push you through a process that you are not enthusiastically a part of. I
Yeah.
want the stories to be inspired, not pulled out of you. Uh,
Mm, love
so
that.
I usually start by just telling them the format of the show. I say it's a storytelling show. There's 5 people, 8 to 12 minute stories. I host the show. It's a very theatrical storytelling environment. And my stories are all focused around trauma. And what I mean by that is things that have shaped who we are, how we move through the world, how we view our community, things like that. And then I go through a list. So it's rape, it's violence, it's religious extremism, it's suicidality, it's relationship issues to the extreme. It's violence. It's contemplating violence. Um, from there, it is there anything that comes up for you
Okay, can we have a
that
break now?
fall in that category?
Let's just have
It's fairly quick.
yeah, let's just have a little break, because it's like, as you was telling me and describing, and you started saying all of these situations that can happen to people. I just was trying to feel and to think how the person that is there in front of you, that also has a trauma that you probably at that stage you haven't heard yet was their story, how their body is reacting, their whole body language is being translated to you as you say all of this. Have you actually stopped and noticed?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's jarring. Uh, Oftentimes, I think I'd probably say the word rape maybe more than someone who works at a rape clinic, or works at a hospital. I say the word domestic violence and people shudder.
Yeah.
And I'm like, this happens to everybody. So when I have this conversation, it's then by nature, I try and keep it very casual. But
Hmm.
when I go through this list of traumas, I mean, that's what it's supposed to do. It's supposed to make you feel a lot, because the first thing that comes up for you, if I say, rape, incest, domestic violence, murder, suicide, um, religious extremism, when I go through that list, you have like, oh, I have this. Oh, I have this. Oh, I have this. And those things heighten you, sure. But if you experience me in this casual state, talking about something that we're going to build together, I'm here with you. I will be with you throughout this whole process. Um, Now it creates what made you heighten? Like what came up for you when I went through this list? Is there something that comes up for you that you think you want to talk about? And I always preface it by saying want to talk about. I don't want someone to feel like they should tell a story. I want someone to feel inspired to tell that story. And that to me is a big distinction between an inspired story and a forced story. If someone would rather just be on stage than deal with trauma, this isn't the show for them, right?
Yeah.
So when I run through that list and you get that response, I want to know what is the thought in your head that gave you that heightened response, because that's the story you need to tell. You might have 10 traumas, but the one that was like, oh my God, ugh,
Yeah.
that like cringy triggered feeling, that like clenched asshole moment, that's the story that is inspired to tell on my stage. Um,
That's
the stories,
exactly my question. If this is through this process, they can identify straight away what is that one story, because we have hundreds and thousands perhaps of stories,
yeah,
but what is exactly that one that's going to be relatable, relevant, and actually describes better whatever is the trauma that they're thinking about and processing.
sure. Yeah. And I think it's appropriate to say as well, this is usually within the first 20 minutes of meeting me. But again, why I think it's so good that they have seen the show, because then they already know what I am like in the show, what my language that I use is. And if you were to come to my show, I think you would hear a lot of the words I use, which is basically like, I am a platform to share the stories. These are happening. I will defend these stories with my life. If you do not like what you are hearing, leave. Like, you do not need to be here. I will defend these performers hands down. And they feel my compassion, my support, my dedication, my mission driven attitude. And then when they talk to me on the phone or over coffee and I say, what's the trauma? They're not coming into it with like, oh my God, this person's crazy. Because I have had that happen. I actually had a guy go all the way to my stage. And after he shared his first story with me, he gave me the feedback of, you're really intense. If I don't know who you are. And I'm sort of like, yeah. And the fact that you made it to my stage shows that you were ready for this.
Mhm.
But if somebody is not ready to work with me to build the story, then don't tell a story at my show. There's other places you can do this. Again, I'm not doing something unique and revolutionary here. It's only revolutionary because of the passion that I have, the mission I've put to this work. If you don't want to do it with me, that's okay. I've had multiple storytellers tell me they don't want to read their story again because they didn't um, they felt, that process is complete for them. They felt, maybe I ask too much or I'm too intense. And again, I'd say same with the audience. It's the same with the performers. I'm not for everybody, but I live my life authentically and exposed. And that to me says you have to be ready to work with me to be in this show. You can go in another show. You can write a story with me and then go perform it in another show. I don't care.
No, I love that, and it's so important for we have that very clear to ourselves. We are not for everyone. I'm
No.
not for everyone, and we understand that because we say that it's not because we are above or feel inferior to anyone, because we know who we are. We know we have standards.
Yeah. I mean, that's the most fun part about being uh in this phase of my life. Like, I get to tell people I work in performance art and I'm a director and a producer. Like, I work a job that people are like, you do fucking what? And I say I work in art and they're like, oh, that makes sense. This woman is kind of crazy. Oh my God, look at her. She wears rings every day. I don't understand. What are the pink sunglasses for? And I don't care. I just, if you want, if you meet me and you're like, ooh, I want to interact, I'm like, cool, let's go. But if you meet me and you get the ick or you don't think you're going to connect with me, I'm not going to change to accommodate you. That's horrible, you know? Some of the best advice I ever got. Actually, it's not advice I got. I think it's in a rap song, or maybe it was an interview by a performer. Um, he was talking about, he's like, if you don't even have my number, I'm not going to respect your advice for my life. And that's like so funny that I, create a show where a lot of people get to interact with me. Is a lot of people all of a sudden started giving me advice about my show. And I'm like, if you don't have my phone number, I don't want your advice for my show. Like, full stop. I mean, that's just what it is. Like, I don't want your advice for my life. I don't want your advice. I don't want your input. I just don't. Like, I'm going to live the life I want to live.
Yeah,
If I'm not hurting you, walk away.
but that's a human thing, and to give advice, to give opinion when actually we haven't even skill for it.
Yeah, yeah. It happened to me last night.
All right.
And I even told the person, I was like, I'm glad the advice was good because I didn't ask for it. And he was like, oh, yeah, good point. And I'm sitting there like, you're not like, I appreciated that comment, but also maybe ask if I want it next time. Because if I didn't like that comment, I would have just judged you, not your comment.
Yeah, very good point. So you mentioned earlier about imposter syndrome.
No.
Yeah, let's go there and just try to understand when in your life you had to deal with the imposter syndrome.
Oh, today, yesterday,
Every
always, literally
day.
constantly. Um, I don't know. I think I have uh when I first started doing the show full time and was like, I am dedicating myself to this. It's gonna work. I'm gonna throw every single thing I've got at it. If this show doesn't work, I will likely be living in my parents' basement. I'm really gonna go for it. I had to tell people time and time again, I defend that decision. People judged the shit out of me. They were like, how can you do this full time? I'm like, what small business ever makes money in the first year? People, are you shitting me? Calm down.
Mm.
But I felt like I had to be my biggest fan. I was like, this is gonna work 100%. I am not stopping until it works. It's working. So I know that that mentality is there. I know that that mentality is something I can do. But then when I'm having an off day or I'm having an off moment, like a minute in each day, I can feel like, what makes me so special?
Mm.
What makes me the person that people want to come buy tickets to see? Selling tickets to something that you made is a weird thing. It's really, really weird. Like, my marketing team told me the image that the audience does the best with on social media advertising is a fucking picture of me. That's terrifying. That's a that's a horrifying thing to think about. Like, I don't want to. That makes me feel like
Yeah.
a chauvinistic, narcissistic, ego-driven something, but it's not even me telling me this. It's a person I trust, and it's
Mhm.
data, and it's okay. So, okay, hands off, business owner, you do that. But it is so common for me to be like, why am I special? I'm just a kid from Michigan, who believes in something, and there's 1,000 of me doing 1,000 amazing things. And why is mine working and theirs not? Or why is theirs working and mine not? And for me, the best way to get over that is to just look myself in the mirror and be like, you are special. My mom's been telling me I'm special my whole life. So it's about time I believed her.
Own it. Yeah.
Um, I think we're all special, and you just got to find the thing that you're special at. And for me, it seems like it's this.
Mm.
Um, I do not shy away from fantasizing about what I want this company and this show to be and to do and to create and to build. Um, And those are big dreams. I am an artist entrepreneur. Like I want to run a big business. I want this to be a national show. I'd love this to be an international show. That's 5, 10, 15, 20 years down the road. Who cares? I'm here for the long haul. And the biggest thing for me in those fantasies is not denying the fact that I have to be successful every step of the way to make that happen. So when I have this imposter syndrome, I usually just let myself float away into what could happen if I don't deny that this is awesome and that I'm doing something cool and fun and engaging. And the reason why people buy tickets and come back is because it's working. Um, it's also just scary as hell to be putting everything on the line for it and say, like, I will, all of the work I've done for this company could in one day fall apart. And I have to be able to accept that too. That makes the imposter syndrome feel a little bit more in my face. Though.
Beautiful sharing. I believe there is many business owners that can relate to what you have shared. It is
Sure.
reality. Even for myself, I have been so busy and focused in writing all of the books that I have done, and it's too more to come up. And when I realized is, oh, people want to see me, they want to see the face, and I was like, oh, but I'm not ready for that. Things need
Yeah.
to be on my time, on my terms, because I'm a bit like you, where sales is concerned. For me, is if people love me, they will naturally want to work with me and buy from me. I don't feel like I can be that um, sales driven person at all. Maybe because it's missing a little bit of the alpha within me. I don't know. Who cares? What I can accept is today I have made a peace with the visibility, and my way to actually show up is through my 2 shows that I'll be doing, because that is on my terms. This is what I felt that I was comfortable in doing. And you found your truth, you found your show. And it was so beautiful to actually hear how inspiring it was, you talking about your passion. And it's exactly like that. If we don't believe in our own dreams, if we don't believe in our own potential, then things can never happen. But we also perhaps need to acknowledge is sometimes things takes slow baby steps, because we also need to be able to feel confident in growing and going through that journey without getting so much overwhelmed.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. The overwhelming part of it is a daily problem. I think every business owner knows that. Um, but yeah, I wrote a poem the other day and it said basically, what if it all works out?
Mm.
And we are so fast to say, what if it doesn't work? You know? But if I shift my day to say, what if this works? Okay, what if this works? Well, then that will work. And then what if that works? And then what if that works? And now all of a sudden I run an international show. And all I have to do is on every step of the way believe in myself first and foremost. And that shouldn't be hard to do. Like it's flabbergasting to me that we live in a world where self-doubt is the biggest thing holding us back on a daily basis. But I like firmly believe that, you know, um, the biggest shift that I've had in the last 9 years, rolling this back to the first question you asked me,
Yeah.
is not transitioning. It's not changing careers. It's not anything. It's just confidence.
Wow.
It's flat out confidence, like just feeling good.
Mm. And what do you do when there is those days that you don't feel so good? What you usually can do to just uplift your own spirit? What do you like to do?
Usually I go to the Botanic Gardens, which is just like 1 block that way, 2 blocks that way. I get a coffee and I walk through the gardens and I just sit. And that usually, like off my phone, which is hard to do when I'm sad, but I try my damnedest to put my phone away. And then I usually will go for some sort of run or something to move my body. Um, but actually, let me rephrase that. I call people. Because while I do those things, I'm usually in contact with people that love me. And that might be like my mom or dad or my best friend or, someone I work with who just, I want to like feel inspired. So we talk about, what the show could become in the future. Um, I mean, I'm lucky that I run a community-driven organization because it makes people think I really want a community, which means they come to me for community, which is great because I really need community. And yeah, I'm not confident every day. I do not wake up every day and slay. It's a challenge for sure.
Mm.
But I have tools that I've developed, and I know how to identify if depression is coming in. And I go through my phases of very confident moments in life, weeks, months, whatever, or phases where it's the other way. And yeah, I think at the end of 2024 or the end of 2023, I was very I was shifting into this phase. I was not feeling super confident, and I was still doing this work. And I think, like you probably know what as well, we receive what we put out. And when I'm putting out positivity and confidence and inspiring others and connecting people and dots and building something, more comes back to me. And that's a self-fulfilling prophecy at that point.
We also need to watch what sometimes we give too much.
Oh, yeah, I have
Balance.
a constant problem with that. That's what I meant earlier when I say like I neglect my own traumas is
Yeah.
I had an experience in February uh and just lost myself almost entirely and just was collapsing in on just became was just not putting myself into the world at all. I was so stuck. And so what I did is I just threw myself at other people. I was developing stories. I was working with people. I was just giving, giving, giving because I thought that would help. But what I needed was to acknowledge I was in pain and that I wasn't doing okay. And then
Mm.
when I did that, I posted a video on our Instagram because my marketing guy was like, "You run a show about it being exposed. You should also be exposed when you're not doing great." And I got an outpouring of love and support, and people started calling me and telling me that, they wanted to hear my trouble. And once I started talking about it, I started getting better and I started feeling better. And then I got better. And it's because I was talking about it. It's because I told the story. It's because I, accepted that I wasn't okay. And that, that was a big, big turning moment for me in this company is I hold a lot of trauma for people. And I have to be very, very, very spiritually and mentally fit in order to do that. And I can't do it by denying my own issues.
Yeah, yeah, and it's so important when we recognize that, for me, I always know, and I was like, sorry, I need to cancel everything, go to a spa, go to just literally just get my car and just go anywhere that I feel driven to, or have those moments that I found those best friends that sometimes we don't have the time to connect because in my case, I do have many, but it's always like, when we do that, I think that's one of my best coping mechanism because they always will tell you stories and they say, "Oh, do you remember that time that we have this and we have done that?" And I'm thinking, "Yes, that's who I am." And sometimes you need someone to just remind you of who you are, that you're capable, to deal with whatever is this shit that is being thrown out, and deal with everything. And then one problem at a time, one
Yeah.
breath at a time, and it's slowly you look and you're thinking, yeah, actually, it was not that bad. I managed to overcome, I managed to deal with that. I understood the lessons, and now I am stronger and I'm back to the game, whatever is, you want to call life. Because for me, it's a huge game that every single day we're just trying to figure out what's the best day to get a reward, or we get stuck, or we
Yeah.
can
I just
go
wake up
back
every
to
day trying to get a
past
gold star.
phases. So if you could just, I know you have shared so much insight, but if you could perhaps talk with people that can really relate to your story now, and when they have those moments, just like you mentioned, of the imposter syndrome, and that you still need to deal with that every single day. But what could you say to someone else that have listeners all of this time, and you know you still would look to you perhaps as a role model now, wanting to come to your show and get to know more about you? Because for me, certainly, you are an example of an inspiration. What would you say that could inspire that person to never ever give up, like you never ever have given up on yourself too? And now look how life is bringing you some amazing rewards.
Guess it depends on how you say given up. Because I woke up every day. That was sometimes all I did. I think for me, what I focus on every day, first and foremost, is me.
Mm,
I don't wake up, the first thing I do isn't give myself to somebody else, isn't give myself to the world, isn't care about everything. I don't fill myself with moral outrage at the things that I have to deal with. I just created a little environment for myself where I can feel at peace, and
mm,
that has helped so much. It is a 20-minute morning routine. I brush my teeth with my non-dominant hand. I say affirmations in the mirror. I make sure I drink a green drink, to make my body feel good. I move my body. I stretch a little. I look at the sun. I drink a coffee or read a book or whatever it is. I think that when I really am in that routine, everything everything starts to just become easier because I know, like, I look forward to my morning routine. I'm
mm,
looking forward to tomorrow's morning routine. Like, I love it every day. That creates for me a path for the day that I can choose to walk down. Some days I don't choose to walk down a good path and I navigate into being a heathen or whatever. But like, find that pleasure moment in your day. It can be at any time doing anything,
mm,
but we can't just give ourselves to the world every day. Like, that can't be our sole thing. We can't just live our lives for other people. We can't just constantly be producing. We just It's just take for yourself what you need for a moment and create that healthy habit. The more I do that, the more I define that for myself, the better things have gotten for me physically, mentally, and spiritually.
wonderful. I have one last question for you. You mentioned that you would love to be international. Um, So what actually has to happen for, let's say, in 2 years down the line, you actually being travel with your shows to different countries and make that dream happen?
So realistically, it could happen at any moment.
Mm,
I so basically I'll franchise the show. So the only requirement would be that it's the format, the mission of the show. The problem is that I host the show, and that's a big part of that experience. So I currently have someone in California and someone in North Carolina who have expressed interest in running the show. That can happen because I can just fly there for a couple $100, few $100. The problem is international. If someone, say, in the UK wanted to host the show, there's no way it's financially feasible to get me to come there to host the show because it's going to be many hundreds of dollars. And then all of a sudden, you have to have a really big venue in order to make that cost benefit. So it's a mission driven show. It is a social mission that I am on. It is for the community. It is also my job. And I have to have a business that creates profit for the people. I will always pay my storytellers. I will always pay the people that help me. I will always, engage in a way that is the best for everybody involved. And that, unfortunately, in the world we live in, requires us to be able to eat food and pay rent and live in this fucking world. So the way it becomes profitable is if we could do a series of shows so that I could stay there for 3 weeks. And that's just kind of what it comes down to.
Mm, I see.
But it's a very, very, very feasible thing to say somebody could come to me and convince me to run the show pretty much anywhere. Um, if it's an English speaking country, I would want to be the host. If it's not an English speaking country, or if it's a country I can't get to financially, like yours, then someone would have to really get me to trust them that they would run the show like I do, because that is a big part of it, a big part of it. Um, and I am a very unique individual. And so to have someone feel like they could do my role, they would have to convince me of that. And that would would be tough right now.
It's all
I
part
feel
of the trust process. I think with everything in life, trust is one of those things that or you have or you don't. And
right.
when it's broken, then I think it's one of those situations you can give a second chance, you can give a third chance, but always we have with a reduced level, because you always anticipate that something may happen. And I literally just have experienced that someone that said, okay, well, let's do this event together. And she traveled 2.5 hours. We have done the website, we have done the whole marketing and videos, and then suddenly, oh, I don't think I can do this. I never have done this in a 2 full days, and blah blah blah. And it was all like building and building the whole, and I was like, you know what? It's okay. And now, a week and a half later, and I'm still receiving messages from her apologizing, and I was like, yeah, you know what? I think we actually just meant to be friends.
Yeah.
There is no way
Yeah.
that in the future we can do something together. You see?
Yeah. I don't think everybody is I mean, we are surrounded by mediocrity. I don't think any individual person is by nature mediocre, but we fall into these systems. And I would say self-care culture has given people permission to not be showing up in their community the way they should. Like, oh, I can't come tonight. I just need to take care of myself. Oh, okay. So fuck me, I guess. Like that's fine. You don't value me, or you don't value our business. You don't value our friendship, whatever that could look like. But yeah, I mean, if someone burns me, my forgiveness of them doesn't come when they apologize. It comes from time, much time, lots of time, a dedication to show up and like re-engage on that
Down the
front.
line, maybe.
Yeah. And that's the thing too. Like the 25% of storytellers who don't go through the process, like I'm not gonna just say like you can email me whenever you want to do this. Like if I've put time into this project with you, then that's my valuable time. This isn't free, you know? And I think people forget that. I think people they don't understand the ramifications of their actions because they don't sit down and think about it. They think, "Oh, I need to take care of myself right now." Okay, sure. But you're not taking care of me, and you promised you would. You made, an agreement. And
Mm,
here you are not withstanding in that agreement, and that's going to have ramifications. It might not kill our friendship. I still want you in my community, but yeah. And so that reason right there that you mentioned is why I hold my show
yeah.
very tight. Because I've already been burned, like I've had some lessons, and we have to learn them more than once usually.
Absolutely, because it's one of those things. If we don't learn and we just believe that, oh, this is just karma, perhaps I really need to forgive, I need to accept and give a second chance. And I was like, oh no, perhaps the lesson was actually you actually stand on your ground and be firm and just say, you know what, thank you so much, but not at the moment.
Yeah. Yeah, just not right now.
Yeah, exactly. So Josie, has been an absolutely pleasure to have you. Honestly, as I said in the beginning, for me, you were such a wonderful role model, a beautiful soul, and there is so much insights and relatable things they have shared today. So I can only just say I love, honor, and I really appreciate you. Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much. This was a lot more fun than normal podcast recording. So I love talking about this stuff, and I think you and I are aligned on so much of how we want to navigate through this world. So that's beautiful. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. And I just would like you be able to share with people. I'm not sure if you have a website, how people can connect with you.
Yeah, the website for the company is exposedstorytelling.com. Very simple. All of our shows are currently happening in Denver. But we are on a very, very fast growth pattern right now, and that's very exciting. So you hopefully will hear about us in your city very soon.
Yes. Yes. Well, I do have my hopes. I must say. So once again, thank you so much. And thank you that have stayed, all of this time with us. I'm sure you have gained lots of insights. And we see you next time. For now, please subscribe if you haven't done yet. And see you. Bye.